Welcome. My name is Moose Moore. I'm affiliated with Courage Beyond as a board member, which is how I got introduced to Zach Bell, who I'll introduce you in just a second. I'm honored to be part of this. In a small part, I am a veteran. There's a lot of veterans in this room, so I am retired military, and I'm passionate about this subject. It's very important. I've raised families. I've lost a lot of buddies, but this is critical where we are right now, talking about veteran suicide. So let me just go around the room. I'm not going to say too much more other than introduce the folks. I will tell you that this is an awareness program, but donations are readily acceptable because nothing happens without money in this world in terms of counseling and doing different things. So I just share that with you. There are ways to donate, and we'll talk about that towards the end. To my right, Tim Lawson. I'll introduce first. Tim is here on the end. Tim is with 1-2 Many, which is a great name, but it's 1-2 Many for our vets. Tim is a podcaster. This will be podcast later on. He's very successful at that. He is a vet and is a Marine. I'm going to tell you right now, there's 4 Marines behind me. There's a couple more in the audience. I've never seen so many Marines in one place.
It's because we're always in front of you.
That's right. That was a true statement, okay?
Gotcha.
That is a true statement. Although when I flew up for us, we did support these guys quite a bit. Ralph is with Knockout Motorcycles, and Ralph is a vet as well as a Marine vet, and is also the SARA Discovery, the Devil's Ride. So we're honored to have him here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm thrilled that he's here. He went out of his way to come. And Noah Currier, I'll get out of the way here so we can see Noah. Noah is another Marine vet that is started at coming. I told him that I would do this very quickly because he's got other things to talk about. But when Noah was injured in a car accident, and he'll talk about that, I'm sure, but he needed services, didn't have any money. He says, I've got to find a way to make money. I'm going to design a t-shirt, and I'm going to sell it so I can get money for services. The name of that company is Oscar Mike, which in the military vernacular means on the move. It's a very successful. In fact, you'll see some of their t-shirts in the back. Most of it's online. I can tell you right now they're probably some of the best looking t-shirts, very patriotic and very military oriented. So Noah's done a brilliant job, and he's got some of his staff here, but I just want to introduce Noah and what he's doing and what he has to say tonight. And Zach Bell, who is now from Nashville. Zach and I met at the YMCA. I happen to have on a Wounded Warrior t-shirt. This is about a year and a half ago, and he comes up and thanks me for my service. I said, well, how'd you know I was in the service? Other than probably my haircut. And he says, I see your shirt. So we started talking. Zach is a Marine, of course, combat veteran, and is on the outreach with Courage Beyond, which is what I'm involved with now. So we're lucky to have this much talent here, and they're here to talk about solutions of a very serious problem, one that's taken a lot of lives, and I think that's all I'm going to say at this point.
To provide best context, the first question I'm going to ask my panelists, I want each of you to explain why you decided to come be a part of this panel. And this was an event that me and Zach first conceptualized, and Zach sort of took the lead on getting Noah and Ralph on here. But I mean, starting with Zach and moving down the line, I mean, why do this event? Why was this important to you?
I just wanted to do it to get the word out because I got tired of hearing about all my friends and only getting together with my brothers when I lose another one. And so decided to try and pick people of like-minded individuals, and we all kind of started at the same place in the Marine Corps and went about a different way, and now we're all still come back to the same issue that plagues all of us and so much more. So
when Zach asked me to do this, I didn't know if I would be a good candidate, honestly, to be up here, and he explained to me why I might be. And I have lost friends and guys in my unit to suicide, but I was thinking more for myself. And in the moment when he asked me, I didn't have any suicidal thoughts or tendencies. But when I reflected back to when I first got back from the invasion and some of the things that I've been through, and a few other personal stories that I don't know if we'll have time to share, but maybe I'll be able to, I realized that maybe I would be a good person to be up here with you, or I hope that I would, because I've been through a lot of the same things, and I would hope that doing this might make a difference, even if it's a small one. That's all we're looking to do right now.
I've been very successful as a Marine and been very fortunate. So for me, I've got a new platform on television and I've got a lot of following. So what I'm doing is trying to get the awareness, trying to connect the dots, trying to get the people that want to help, the people that don't know how to get help, and put all those pieces together. So that's the reason I'm here. I'm trying to just use my little bit of visibility to drive this thing. So that's why I'm here.
The One Too Many project emphasizes three things thus far, in being empathy, renewed purpose, and mentorship. Those are three things amongst all the conversations and interviews that I've done that have proven to sort of be a commonality. Those are the things that veterans are finding as they're surviving suicidal behavior. Does anybody want to take the lead on empathy? Zach, I feel like you're the best candidate for this because the story that you told on Monday in that interview is very powerful. While you and your friend were messaging each other and he was explaining his difficulties that he was having, you recognized that you could have just as easily explained to him the same difficulties that you were having, and just not realizing that was a conversation that you two could have had. You didn't. I mean, you want to speak on that event and how maybe sharing a little bit more about your struggle could have helped you connect a little better with your friend during that time?
There's a lot of stuff that's like overlooked, especially when you get out of the military. There's this kind of vague idea that like when you get out, there's like a weigh-in station or something where you go through and they give you all the info you need to know about how to get into school and how to find a house, how to find a job, how to write a resume, like all the stuff they didn't go over in like Afghanistan, for instance. And it's really tough because like we're our own worst enemy, like all of us. Every single military person. I was always taught like by my seniors is just bring me solutions, not problems. It's like immediately you're not going to tell anybody anything's wrong, and so you're not going to talk about an issue. And if you tell somebody, oh man, I can't sleep or I can't do this, you get sent away and having to checked out by like your medical boards and stuff, that you lose your job 6 months and that's everything else. So it carries on to afterwards. But it's the best way I think to describe it is me and Marco was his name, and we were just talking, right? And it's kind of like if we were all just in here and y'all were all at the back and there's an elephant in the middle, and I was just still talking and didn't acknowledge the elephant because we all just kind of have these like, flyovers, glances where you get kind of a hint that somebody's probably depressed or not doing too hot, but you don't want to ask too much because you don't want to say that you're not doing too hot either, and it's just kind of goes round and round and round. And it was I remember when I got the call, like I remember we were going to buy my car, and I got a call and they said, my friend Jay called me and he's like, hey man, he's like, Marco's gone. And like I just started like screaming at the top of my lungs, and my wife pulled over and I didn't want the kids to see me, and I just couldn't believe it for so long, and it hurt because it was right there in front of me and hiding in plain sight. And I'll be honest, the hardest part was going back and looking at all the Facebook messages that just were glaring and just right in my face, obvious of that we were both going through this same thing, and none of us are above it. And it was just too much to look at it. And after a certain amount of time, I had to delete them. And so now this is what I do. Like I don't really like this as a whole. I'll be drained afterwards. That's fine. But I just can't stand the idea of going to see someone else who didn't know that I could help them. And that's it. So
I believe that renewed purpose is the strongest element, because when a military member gets out, you as a young E2 or E3, you have so much responsibility and so many people relying on you, and just even as a PFC in the air winger, I knew I could see the direct connection between what I was doing in garrison to what was occurring in Iraq, and that amount of knowing how many people were depending on my ability to serve them properly was huge, and that motivated me. When you get out, it's hard, even when you get employed in a position of responsibility, to still find that renewed purpose. When I found out that Ralph was going to be on the panel, the first thing I thought about was a motorcycle club, and how that's a community of people that can come together, and there's positions within that club that everybody has a responsibility, and you know that the other people are depending on you to get that sort of stuff done. So, Ralph, you can't talk about how you even mentioned that you and I talked before the panel about how finding a motorcycle club brings that camaraderie back. And helps give that element of renewed purpose to a veteran.
The camaraderie, the whole thing, when you unplug from that, you feel like there's no purpose. It's like you've lost your identity, and
you got this, buddy. You got this.
Okay, so anyway, so you lose your identity and you don't have anywhere to replace that. There's nothing in this planet that will replace it. So for me, my journey, I found motorcycle clubs and I got involved with that. And I'm not saying that that's the answer. What I'm saying is there's a lot of places out there to fit in, and there's a lot of places to get the brotherhood and the camaraderie and the stuff that you've lost. So with that being said, reach out to us, man. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just get this out to everyone. There's people here that care. There's people that want to help you. There's people, like Marines are taking care of Marines like never before. And it's here. Come get it. And let us help you. Sorry.
Whenever you're ready.
So let us help you out. So for me, being an airline pilot, man, it's the most boring thing that I could ever imagine to come to do after being a Marine. I mean, it's like, okay, I sit here at 35,000 feet, which is pretty cool. I got a good job, pretty cool, pretty safe, pretty quiet. But you miss the noise, I guess. You miss the noise of it. You miss so much. So anyway, connect, look for us, man. We're out there trying to find you, trying to help you. Call us, call me, man. If you want to talk, call me. So there's so much more I have to say. I wish it wasn't so tough right now, but keep driving. I mean, Marines drive, man. Just keep driving. Don't give up. We're here.
So the third element is mentorship, and no, I know I didn't prime you beforehand that this might be the subject that you're coming to. So I don't know if you'll have something to really relate to this, and if not, we can go back to that story you mentioned in your introduction. But when you're in the military, you're a leader and you're a follower. You experience both sides of that mentorship process. You have people who are leading you, and you have people that you lead. And over 50% of veteran suicides right now are over the age of 50. And one of the ways that I've been seeing success in helping that is connecting Vietnam vets with Iraq and Afghanistan vets, and allowing the Vietnam vet become a mentor to that Iraq and Afghanistan vet, and providing the empathy there, because they both have that commonality of being in the war, but there are two different situations where they can still connect with each other and they can still learn from each other. And I think mentorship is it's very important in that trust and that emotional growth that you find. No, I don't know if you have something to speak on specifically, and if not, you maybe can share us the story that you mentioned in your intro.
Yeah, I never looked at myself like I was doing something that I would ever be considered a mentor, and I still don't. I've actually gone and talked to colleges and into their business programs, and I laugh beforehand because they sometimes they'll introduce me as CEO of a company, and to me that sounds ridiculous because I never set out to be a CEO or a president of a company. I really was doing something to help me and my buddies and a lot of other guys, and it just seemed like I was the only person that was willing to use my garage at the time to turn it into the warehouse. So it wasn't a position or a title or anything that I was seeking. It just seemed to be the ends to a mean that we were looking for. And throughout this, I do get a lot of really nice messages from guys telling me all the time that maybe they're struggling with something, whether it's combat or a disability or loss of love in their life, you know, whatever it is. I do feel like I've had quite an experience with all of these things, and maybe that does make me somebody that people can I don't know, look up to is a wrong word, but maybe I can give them hope, because I do, you know, I have a lot of my own struggles, but I attempt to power through them, and maybe that does, you know, I would hope that can open somebody else's eyes, and to see that whether it's combat or a disability or losing somebody that you love, that you can keep going on. And it was because of friends of mine, you know, people like Zach Bell. You know, Zach, this is the first time I've ever met Zach in person, and I actually feel like we're brothers, and I mean that more than just saying that he's a fellow Marine. The conversations that we've shared and the things that we've shared over the phone, he's helped me through things, and maybe I've helped him too. I don't know, but you know, that's what I think this whole thing is about, and that's the circle that everybody needs. It's the friends. It's the, you know, Zach might not think so, but he could be a mentor to me too. You know, and he really can. He does the things that he says and the experiences that he's had motivate me and empower me and actually keep me going on. And he'd probably say the same thing back, and we, you know, but it's nice to have a unit like that, a brother. And we didn't serve together. We actually served years apart from each other, and lands apart from each other. But the missions were the same, and the things that are happening are the same, and our brothers that are doing this to themselves are the same. And I don't know if mentorship is something that I, you know, am a candidate to speak about, but
I think what's interesting about mentorship, right, is it's a relationship you can have with someone without calling it that. You know, like I've had plenty of. I'm a loud person, I'm sure. But, you know, mentorship is a relationship that you don't have to label, right? I mean, that's not something that you don't have to go out and ask someone, will you be my mentor? I mean, just finding a connection with someone who is obviously guiding you that you're willing to follow. I mean, that is mentorship. You know, someone being able to give you, that's giving you advice personally or professionally that you admire and that you value, you know, that makes them your mentor. And so I think what's really unique about that, about the relationship within mentorship, is it doesn't have to be labeled. You know, it doesn't have to be an official connection. And so I think that you're definitely a candidate for speaking on mentorship.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I know Zach thinks that you're his mentor. He talks about you all the time.
Love him.
So I wanted to get specific answers out of each of you for one of the. So the next couple questions are sort of open to the panel. If you have something you want to say, if you're inspired, reach for the mic, grab it, tear it away, and start speaking. I know sooner or later Zach will grab the mic and start letting us know how he feels about everything. That's why I'm holding the mic. I'm keeping it from him right now.
Foreign policy.
I can see over there. I can see over there. You're ready.
Yeah.
For all you social media nuts, I don't know if you can see it. It's a little bit smaller, but. If you're tweeting, if you're social mediating, everybody on a stream that wants to share this conversation, hashtag #OneTooMany, ONE, the number 2 many is what we're using. At RR Knockout, at We Are Oscar Mike, at Zachary E. Bell, at Tim Lawson 21. If you can't read it up there on the screen, those are our Twitter handles if you want to attribute us on the amazing things that we're saying right now. So one of the
amazing things.
Yeah, amazing things. You know, one of the problems, right, is it's amazing at how big of a topic this is, and how many times I talk to people about it. I constantly get, hey, I love what you're doing. I just lost a friend to suicide last week, or our unit just lost 3 guys last month, and it's amazing that how, like, we're preaching how big of a problem this is, but yet nothing's obviously nothing's really being resolved because this is still occurring. Part of that is because we're not having the right conversation about it. We're not opening up and connecting to these veterans. Does anybody want to lead the conversation or start with why that is, and what needs to change either in the military culture or in American culture to be able to more easily have these conversations about emotional and mental health.
I think it's like a two-part issue. One, mental health in general, it's a crazy idea to talk about how crazy you may or may not be, especially like admitting to yourself and just trying to understand that.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah.
For Marines, we were not really qualified on this subject, obviously, because we joined the Marine Corps. So we just got a disclaimer on that. I like to put that out there for everyone.
Let me fly jets, you know. They wouldn't even let me touch a GI Joe. Come to think of it.
So.
No, it's weird. And to talk about it to where it's a point to where, like, you know what, I'm just not doing too hot, is something. But I mean, it all comes down to like us talking to each other, and even as much as we all talk to each other, like I'd say probably 80, not even that, maybe half of it's like really what's happening. The other half is what's not happening. I could have spent every day for the rest of my life in the Marine Corps. I loved being a Marine. I loved being in the infantry. I had a squad of Marines, 15 guys that would do whatever I wanted, which was really cool. You know, I had a way to solve all my problems in Afghanistan. I was really good at it. My wife thought I looked hot in the uniform. That was a huge perk. And I could have done it forever, and she would have stayed with me and still always been by my side, but I just didn't want to walk away from her anymore. And so when you get out and you hear from all your friends, you want to talk to them, and they'll be like, "Oh, how's it going?" And it's kind of like quitting the band. Like you're John Lennon. Like the Beatles are going, and you're just like, "I'm out," and they don't want to talk to you anymore. They don't have anything to do about it. But it's just not being honest enough, because I drove to North Carolina this Friday because another one of my friends committed suicide. I have handed over a lot of folded flags. I've looked at a lot of moms and dads in the eye, and I've told them that I failed them and I couldn't bring their son home. But lately I don't ever feel like it's going to stop. I don't ever feel like there's enough that can be done. Sometimes it's just like, what else can I do? And it took me a while to realize this over the course of the weekend, was that it's not me. I'm not the one who can do enough. It's right, I can never do enough. It's all of us, because like we all have to just really kind of talk about it more and embrace the fact that like we're all different. Like I was 18. No, I wasn't 18. I was 18 when I enlisted. 20 when I became a father to my beautiful oldest daughter. 2 days later, I left for Afghanistan for 7 months. Like, who wouldn't be different? And that's not bad. It's a part of me, but it's not all that I am. And I mean, that's why I do this now, because every day I want to try to be the person that I wish had been there for me when I was at my darkest moments, which were really bad. And that's how I want to keep going and giving back. So.
You know, if I can add to that too, it's almost like I think a lot of us would disagree with the letter D at the end of PTSD, and I don't think that it should have ever been called a disorder to begin with. Whether you're in the military or not, people deal with very intense stress in their lives, and post-traumatic stress is completely normal. I think adding stigmas, and you know, in the Marine Corps, I know that it's one of those things where you're almost not allowed to talk to your buddies while you're in and while you're going through anything, because you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be the one guy in the company out of 150 that's having the problem. You don't want to be the one that can't sleep at night. You don't want to be the one that's having the nightmares. You know, you just don't want to be that guy. And then when you get out, you start realizing and you start seeing the things that happen to your friends and yourself, and you start seeing everybody, or you know, the lines at the VA hospitals and people all with PTSD, and they label themselves with PTSD, and they say I have an issue, but I feel like a lot of times they're not handling it the right way. They're not, and when I say that, I mean they're not talking to their brothers. They're not talking to their brothers and sisters, the ones that actually are going through the exact same thing as them, and it's because they never felt that they could, or they didn't want to be that person. And that's really all that I have to say about that. But I think that goes right in line with that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is being hard as a Marine. We're not supposed to talk about that stuff, but you've got to. You've got to talk about it. That's the thing that I think hurts us is they're just not talking.
Yeah, one of the interviews I did for the podcast, one of the Marines admitted that he didn't reach out for help because he thought he was going to lose his job. And it's sick to think that job security is the reason why people are contemplating suicide and not willing to talk to other people about it. I think one huge disservice that our military does is, we have service members that go to combat and 3 weeks in get hit by an IED. And it's not like PTSD waits for you to get home to set in. I mean, you're experiencing that PTS, minutes after, once your mind wraps around, what just happened, and you still serve the next 6 to 9 months in combat, completing the mission and doing everything the military requires of you. And when you get home and tell them, hey, what happened over there started getting to me, I want to talk to someone about it, they start, the military responds to that as if, well, now you're a liability to our mission, when you were completing a mission still for 8 months after the fact, after you had already experienced this and you're accomplishing that mission in one of the most high-octane environments. And so I think in the military culture, I think that's where the conversation needs to start being more easily had, is letting, the military needs to realize that just because you're experiencing emotional, I mean, we've all been sad. I mean, this is, it's not something that anybody's immune to. We've all been sad, and it's, a lot of people just want to, go through some sort of counseling, just talk to someone, just to sort of come to terms with what they saw, or just to realize that they're not crazy, for feeling the way that they do. So I think that's my little rant on the military and how it responds to to the emotional and mental health that service members know that they need, and being one to open up about it. I want to touch on Oscar Mike a little bit, because maybe not everybody's familiar with Oscar Mike and what it is you do, and it's one of the few organizations that I really admire as far as giving a new purpose and a new motivation to veterans, and Team Rubicon's another one, Team Red, White, and Blue is another one, providing activity and purpose and to veterans and giving them an opportunity to stay active and to continue pushing forward in their lives. Take a second to briefly explain Oscar Mike and what your mission is, and then differences that you've noticed in either the people that you've employed or that you've worked with.
Oscar Mike first started, actually, the idea of Oscar Mike was to start a foundation. There was a lot to get started to start a foundation. I had already created a t-shirt that I had used as a fundraiser for me and another Marine who needed extra physical therapy after our 6-month stint at the VA was over, and we wanted to go back. And we wanted to go to somewhere outside of the VA that was a little bit more experimental, and no insurance covered it, so we sold this shirt. And about 8 years later, I was sitting at the National Veteran Wheelchair Games, and I'm listening to all these guys who are having problems affording to get to rehabilitative sporting events, adaptive sporting events. And I just thought, well, for one, this is outrageous. There's all these organizations out there that raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and any one of them, it's a drop in the bucket to send every single disabled veteran to an event. It's not that big of a thing. I mean, for an organization that starts in their garage, it's a big task. For some of these other ones that exist out there, it's a hurdle that they could jump over no problem. But these guys are all sitting in the lobby and they're talking about how broke they are trying to get to events like the one that we were at the time they were talking about it. So I threw out an idea for the fundraiser, what we had done before, and everybody was in a different branch of the service. We had 20 guys in the lobby at the time just shooting the breeze about this, and so it was every branch of the service. The first shirt we started with was a Marine Corps shirt that had the Marine Corps emblem on the front, and on the back it said, "He who sheds blood with me shall forever be my brother." It was a tattoo that me and a couple of my buddies had gotten after we got back from Iraq together the day we got home. And so we started the foundation and we started a company so that we could hire veterans, we could hire disabled veterans. We had this big idea of we would be the perfect candidates to do this because we understand each other. We are our target market, right? And we are who we want to cater to. And so when I talk about Oscar Mike and I say the idea, Oscar Mike really is just an idea. That idea of staying on the move, what Oscar Mike actually means, is what it's all about. It's giving yourself or a friend or a family member a purpose. It's leading by example. When you put on an Oscar Mike shirt and you wear it around, you're letting people know that you stand for a few different, very obvious things. One of the things that I haven't talked about is that the apparel is American made, which was very important to us. There's all sorts of statistics on how everything has been outsourced and there is no American made anymore. So that was just, that's one thing that doesn't really need to be in this conversation, but was one of the things that we thought was important to us when we started it. And the reason I mention it is because it's all about an idea. It's if we can better ourselves and better the place around us, our communities and our country and our brothers and sisters and our family members, then everything gets better, right? And it's the trickle-down effect. And that's what Oscar Mike is, and we're crossing our fingers that it works. We're 2 years into it, and we're loving it, and I think that it's going to make a big difference in the world.
Really, none of this conversation that we're having, that any other organization that's any conference, any panel, any program that you see on PBS, NPR, none of that stuff matters if we don't take it to our local communities, our families, our friends, and start having these same conversations and what are you doing over there? And making it easier to have this conversation with each other. 2.7 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans will be back in society by the time we pull out of Afghanistan. And that's just veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan war. That doesn't and so that excludes me. And there's at least another million of me running around there. There's a divide. There's a veteran-civilian divide that definitely needs to be bridged. There's definitely a divide that there needs to be a better understanding. When a civilian has a Afghanistan veteran as a neighbor and sees him coming back from war, there needs to be a way for them to be able to feel comfortable with opening up to that person and engaging with that person and not suffer from that problem of I don't know what they went through. I don't know what that was like. Who am I to talk to him? I don't want to make it seem like I'm imposing on him or whatever it may be. So in that idea of civilian-veteran divide, I think it's really important when talking about veteran suicide, right? Veteran suicide is suicide among veterans, but in the end, it's still suicide, right? I mean, that's the root problem here is suicide. So it's obviously something that is not that the civilian world's not immune to, obviously. So how does the military subculture and in the civilian sector, how do we bridge that gap, or maybe not even with a solution? Where do you think that conversation starts? What are ways that clearly benefits the veteran community?
I think what really needs to happen is an evolving of the conversation of what exactly it means to be a military veteran. If you look at World War II's generations of veterans, they were called the greatest generation our nation ever had. They shaped our country, they built industry, they did all these things, and they fought the axis of evil, and America won, right? We stepped up, they came in Pearl Harbor, and we wiped them off the face of the earth. And that's amazing. But my generation of veterans is seen as just the guys who are talking about PTSD, who are not as strong, not as courageous, or not manly enough to just say, just button it up and keep going. No, it's not that at all, because my generation of veterans is the only all-volunteer fighting force in our nation's history, period. And that's pretty cool, last time I checked. So what it goes into is the fact of that people just have to ignore low-hanging fruit of the so-called association between military PTSD and violence, right? People think just because I've been to war that I'm an inherently violent person. That's not true at all. I know more about life, and all veterans do, than anybody who hasn't. I've seen mankind at its darkest moments, what they'll do to each other in the most horrendous ways. And what what it means when that happens to you, when you're in that world. But I've also seen mankind at its finest moments, where you're racing to lay down your life for your brother because he's willing to do the same for you, and you don't want him to beat you to it. Right? There's nothing else like that. It's a true selflessness. And so, and people will be like, oh, he was in the Marines, he went to Afghanistan. I'm not going to dig a fighting hole in my front yard, with a pistol and hide out from my wife and kids sometimes when they're mean to me. That doesn't make any sense. I would dig into my backyard where nobody could see me. Cover and concealed. That'll be part 2. We'll go into that later. But,
and well hydrated.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. It's not this tie. It's really weak, and it's just caught in the news cycle. Why would you want to tell anybody you're a veteran when you hear about the Fort Hood shooting? Why would you want to tell anybody you're a veteran when they're talking about suicide rates? Why would you tell anybody a veteran when the biggest thing out there is if you claim you have PTSD, your guns will be taken away, your house will be gone, all you'll have left is a shed. Fact. Well, I don't want to do that at all. So it's got to be a change of the conversation in the sense that we fear what we don't understand, so try and understand it. Knowledge is power. Read something on your own. Go out there and just try and take each person what they're worth. I get it. We're all 7 shades of crazy, and eventually we'll all buy the hat with the flare buttons on it, and tell them war stories at the VFW. You're close.
I know you got one.
Yeah. I can't wait to get there too. I'm excited. But regardless, the point is that it's up to us, and nobody's gonna do it for us. And we've done a lot together, and that's the only way we're gonna make it through this.
I want to first round of questions from the audience, because like I said, this is a conversation we're trying to have. So this isn't a program of us telling you a bunch of things that we know. Clearly, there needs to be a conversation at our level, and that comes with as much engagement as possible. So, can this reach into the audience?
Probably come out after the tour.
Does anybody have any anybody want to engage with any of the panelists? Any topics or questions that you want us to touch on from our perspective or opinion?
The first question I have deals with not necessarily what we can do about prevention of suicide, because we all want to do that. But first of all, and I represent the Tennessee Department of Veterans Affairs, what can we do to reach out to the veterans, the OIF, OEF veterans, UDOM veterans, because we know how to reach the Korean War veterans, the World War II veterans, the Vietnam veterans. How do we reach you guys? Is it Twitter? Is it Flickr? Is it Facebook? We know it's not fax, okay? So that's one of the biggest obstacles that we have in our department, is to try to reach you guys, because you need help. You've got benefits that you've earned, and we want to make sure you're aware of those benefits, and we want to help you every way that we can. So that's my question. What's the best way to connect and to communicate with your generation?
So it's a really great question, right? Because this oddly actually ties in with the idea of mentorship, and that looking up to someone for help. Our generation has a really bad taste in our mouth about the Veterans Affairs, right? The VA is not where we want to go for help. We're trying to do everything we can to not have to engage with the VA. I know guys that the only reason they engage with the VA is for education benefits, and they even hate doing that. And so I think it's getting onto the platforms and into the organizations that our generation is looking up to, getting involved with organizations like Team Rubicon, like Oscar Mike, like Veteran Empire, a lot of these veteran-focused and veteran-run organizations that our generation can empathize with more, and that can relate to, and either partnering with them and getting a message through them, because the Duffel blog, Terminal Lance, those would be great. They have hundreds of thousands of followers. I mean, Congress reads the Duffel blog. There's got to be ways to partner with these outlets. Let me tell you, Flickr. No one uses Flickr. But
I'm surprised you knew what that was.
I've seen it on a website. I think your website actually has a link to Flickr.
It does.
But, and I think that's where you start. I think that's where that's how you connect with our generation, is getting through to the organizations that we're involved with, because those organizations understand us better. And even if you're not acting on behalf of Veterans Affairs, even if it's a message that's told by those organizations to their followers, the information's still getting there, and the material that they need about their benefits is still getting to them, and overall being effective.
The quickest way to get to the masses, and that's kind of my role, and that's what I'm trying to do, is use the platform to get to the masses, to continue this. And I've got several different programs in play to get this type of attention to the organizations, because still, your organization's not talking to his isn't talking to his, but we have all these resources, we have people who want to help, we're still not putting them together. It's like there's no central command, we just haven't figured that out yet. So that's kind of my mission, is to use the media, use the platform to get everybody at the same space. I mean, I remember we used to do CAX build-ups and stuff, and we did that stuff with the Air Force and the Army, but we never talked to them. Like, we kind of found out that shit doesn't work. Excuse me, but it doesn't work. So we got to start communicating. Well, all right, well, we're going first. Nope, we're here. We're right beside you. Nope, we're going first. There's just problems with that. So we still have that on just a societal basis, that we need to get a central command and get everyone putting into the same pot, so we can get out the resources to everyone.
As far as the VA goes, I think that it's great as acting as a central hub. There are a million organizations that are under the VA's umbrella. It's just that the VA isn't really associated or related with the other organizations. The VA is the machine behind everything, and a lot of times, I mean, the VA actually helped me get Oscar Mike started, but then after they helped me get Oscar Mike started, I haven't heard a word or a sentence ever since, and that's kind of a problem, especially when you talk about OIF and OEF vets, because the VA is not cool. It is not relevant. It is not looked at greatly in the media right now, even though I love the VA, and I don't know where I would be without the VA. They've done amazing things for me, but they really don't have any connection with a lot of these organizations after the fact. And these organizations are the ones that the guys who are coming home or having problems would associate with, probably well before they would with the VA, because it's a smaller community. It's more more of a peer group, which I think is probably the most important part of that. If it's a peer and it's not somebody who's maybe looking at you and telling you what the solution for your problems needs to be, and it's more of like with Oscar Mike, it's more of an inclusion thing. You become Oscar Mike, you become a team member, you become whatever it is, which you can never get through the VA, which I think would also really help on this topic specifically of veteran suicide.
The best way I can try to explain it is, like, I always say that when you're in the military, like, PTSD isn't a real problem, because when you're surrounded by the same type of crazy, like, it seems normal, right? Like, it was normal to be like, hey man, we did this, that, and other thing, because they were there. Like, we have this culture and develops, and it's not just on the service member. My wife would always like connect all the dots, and it was really awesome to see how she would stay connected with all the wives and girlfriends and spouses, significant others, and had this like unit running, and there was this huge network to where, like, I remember before, each time we came home about 2 months out, they would like go over to, they'd rotate like which house they would go to, and one would cook a meal and one would do that, and it was like their little unit. And so I was like, man, I picked a really good one. I don't know how I did that, but it was awesome, because like that's the thing that we're missing so much. Like when you come back home, wherever it is, like we were in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, right? It's on the East Coast, and everybody's scattered to the winds. And there's not like a sign that says like Marines here or veterans this way. It's not like that. And so what I feel is the biggest thing that we're trying to develop at Courage Beyond is like making a group and like a new unit, a new place to call home, because it doesn't matter if nobody's gonna like think of like, I'm gonna call a doctor, I'm not feeling good, or a psychologist, whatever. You're gonna call your friends, your brothers, your relatives, people who understand you. And I think it needs to be brought up to a bigger emphasis of the fact of that, like, we've been through so much together, we can get past this as well, but we have to come together as one. Like, just building that new home-based unit right where you're at, because that'll be the way things will stop, is when you have a brother there or somebody else who knows what it's like to be in freshman English with a whole bunch of 18-year-olds and trying to figure out what MLA format is and how many diapers to get on the way home, and just thinking, you know what, Afghanistan was so much easier a few months ago, but it's hard to relate to. Can't relate to your fellow freshman 18-year-old student, but yeah, we just need to build a better community and a network.
We've tried a lot of different platforms to get the media to pick this up, as far as entertainment, to where it includes this kind of subjects to where people watch it. But no one wants to touch the subjects. No one does. That's not popular. So I think, Zach's right. We just got to build our communities out, but we need to have a central command. We need to have one place where everyone sends their, they bounce stuff off of. And I think that's kind of the solution to this. Is it takes the community to do it, build it grassroots, build your foundation in your own community. But we need somewhere to plug that foundation that's built, so we can start stacking bricks.
I'm on annual training right now in the Army. I'm a reservist. I'm a behavioral health officer. But I coincidentally work at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Thanks for your service, Secretary Shinseki. But my question is this. Is there something, I'm an Iraq and Afghanistan care coordinator, so you've met people like me in civilian capacities. Is there a way the VA could make it relevant? Where, you're right, it's a scattered network throughout the country. Could there be a Marine casual encounter during the week? Could there be an Army group that meets casually in a medical facility, God forbid? But is there a way to take this network of thousands of facilities throughout the country, outpatient clinics, vet centers, CBOTs, medical centers, and partner with your dynamic organizations to really create a hub where your brothers come together? Is that possible? And if so, what does that look like, where we can reinvent American communities?
I don't know if it's really about creating that. It's about supporting the other organizations. I think there can be a central command, there can be a hub, but it's really just that. All right, for instance, non-for-profits are just like corporations. They compete with each other. One of the things that made me, love what Zach was saying, we agreed 100% in our first conversation. He works for one service organization, I work with another. And we instantly bonded and said there is no divide here, which, competition amongst organizations when it comes to service organizations, if you want to stop stuff like this, and if you want to create a network, there is no competition. And if when an organization thinks that there's competition when it comes to raising awareness or money for veterans and programs that exist, they're already wrong, from right off the get-go. So I would say it's supporting one another and to stop looking at things as if they were competition. Not that the VA does at all, that's a whole different monster. But I'm just saying, as far as all those thousands of organizations that exist and that central hub, it doesn't actually have to be a physical central hub. It has to be a cohesion of all of these people, at least an acceptance that you're there and not a competition. One organization, Courage Beyond, does something slightly different than Oscar Mike. And all the other organizations that exist, but we all gotta give each other our pats on the back and give shout outs to each other and say, hey, if you have this problem, if you have a physical disability, maybe you should reach out to Oscar Mike. If you're having a problem with PTSD or mental health, maybe you should reach out to Courage Beyond. Maybe you should reach out to these organizations instead of trying to keep that all internal and look at other organizations as if they were competition. And if you can improve that network somehow, I think that you're on the right track a little bit.
So what I do is I'm the outreach specialist for Courage Beyond. And what we do is we provide free to low-cost mental health services nationwide to all military members and our families, with online support groups, in-person support groups, spousal retreats, where we take people who've been so selfless for so long and teach them how to be a little bit selfish and to reignite that sense of self. And we do face-to-face counseling nationwide. If you call our appointment line, our average first initial appointment is about 72 hours. Killing it, right? That's not, hours aren't really associated with, veterans and medical stuff unless it's No, it's not. But like we do mental health services, right? That's something I know and what we own, right? I do not know how to design a shirt. Right, and that was one of the first things he said is like, I'm not going to design shirts. You're not going to, try and reinvent the mental health services. And he's like, no, not today at least, right? And so it's the competition that kind of, stops people from going because you have to own like what you're good at and just, this is a resource. This is, it's my lane, but we can work together. There's a lot of that, but also to meet the veterans where they're at. I mean, it's the hospital, the traditional structure, all that stuff. It kind of terrifies me a little bit, and I'm sure not everybody wants to go there. But like, I had this ideas of like, what do my people like? What do Marines like? Well, they like food and they like beer. Honestly, that's just it. And so why do we like that? Because I had so many good memories of all my friends coming over, to which my daughters call uncles, which will be great when they start dating, having a whole squad of Marines out there. But we were this family, we were this unit, and we were just having a good time and enjoying each other. So why not meet the people where they're at? Do that same thing. Like, I have this idea that if you trick people into doing therapy, they'll start doing it. Like if you lead a horse to water type thing. Like all of us, if you just put a whole bunch of vets in the room, like we will not talk to each other at first, but then it's like, I don't know, magnetism or something. We'll start pulling towards each other because like you can recognize it, and then we'll end up starting to relate to each other, and we'll have friends, and we'll know like how I knew Moose was a vet. He doesn't say that he was like lifting everything that day, and I was slightly scared of him in the gym. We just connected because like he knew it and I knew it, and it's really cool, and he's a great mentor to me. He's helped me out immensely. But that's the thing is like we just have to come together and have to think outside the box and not traditional like hospital type setting. I mean, that's my idea at least.
We're Marines talking about this, but this is an entire veteran problem. So the other thing, like breaking down the boundaries between the competition of the different organizations, we got to break down the barriers between the Army guys and the Air Force guys and the whole thing. It's like, hey man, we're here helping veterans. We're trying to help everyone and everyone involved. So take that it's all of us, not just Marines.
One thing I reiterate a lot when I have this conversation with the people is, I don't want to take anything away from combat veterans and what they've experienced, but if you think about the very few people that served in our military, then think of how small, fewer than that are the people that experience combat. Not every veteran is killing themselves went to combat. Not every one of them saw messed up things in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some of them just can't get a job, and their spouse is going crazy. Some of them, I talked to a couple of Marines that had pre-military experiences that just came back to haunt them during their service, but because now they're in the service, they can't talk about it. Even though it's not service related, it's still adversely going to affect their career because they're serving, and it's an emotional mental health issue. So I think that's another bridge, or another wall we have to break down. Is it isn't just combat PTSD and the rest. It's all every issue that that veterans are facing that's making them question the value of their life is equally important, and it's saddening how many people I talk to and they're like, well, I don't want to bring it up because there's so many people that have it worse than I do, right? And that's the wrong mindset to have it, because even if they do have it worse than you do, they may not be taking it as hard as you are. There could be someone who, I know guys that went to combat and you would never know because, they never, their emotional stability is amazing. And I know I've met a couple guys that, just had some transitional issues, and that was hitting them really hard. So removing that stigma as well, I think is equally as important when breaking down those walls.
Tim, I think you said earlier that, and Ralph also reiterated how strong Marines are and how you all want to stick together and be tough. So as someone on the ground level, how do you convince someone that they need help or are worthy of help with that mentality?
Right, that's tough. That's a really hard question to answer because we're built to be strong and to resist weakness, and in the Marine Corps they say pain is weakness leaving the body, right? And I just in the moment we're talking about physical pain, but when you're conditioned that way, you probably respond to emotional, mental pain the same way. I think this is a lot where empathy and mentorship really come into play. Is when the first event that I ever spoke at was at the American Legion Auxiliary Conference, and I had a lady tell me about like a 19-year-old Marine who was really going through some emotional issues, and he was, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, and he was pleading out for help, and just couldn't find someone for him to talk to. And my recommendation was find someone in his units that he looks up to and have him talk to him, because that's someone who models the same image that he believes he's supposed to live up to, that can communicate to him that it's okay to feel that way. So maybe it's not possible for the average civilian to tell a Marine of 8 years that it's okay to get a little emotional, but it is okay. But I can guarantee you that that Marine sergeant can let them know, like, look, dude, you are not the only person who's going through this. We all deal with the same way, and this is this is a great opportunity for you to let me know how you're feeling. So the other guys may have more to add on to that, but I think maybe when that starts becoming difficult, maybe it doesn't have to be another Marine, doesn't have to be another same branch, but someone who's been living up to that same image of not being weak and connecting them with that person, letting and then they can relate to them that it's okay to feel this way.
The key is reigniting their sense of self-worth, right? When you're in the military, especially, just any branch, like, your job is not a job, like, it's a lifestyle. It's who you are. So, like, when I left the Marine Corps, I didn't know anything else. That's all I've known. And you have to teach people that they're worth it by reigniting their sense of self-worth, and just taking, because there's two types of veterans. There's givers and takers. And so we have to take the takers and turn them into givers, because, like, one of the coolest things I've ever done is just, like, going to community service projects or giving back, or kind of my own personal way of showing that like, I'm not a puddle, I'm at least like a lake of a person. Like, I have some depth to me other than just saying hoorah and stuff like that, which I do all the time. But it's just trying. I'll put it this way: when you can teach someone that they're worth it, right? You'll give them, like, the most powerful thing of all, and you'll give them hope. Hope is what has built nations. It's led people to do incredible things they never thought possible. It's taken a veteran who was in an accident on no fault of his own, and just because he was turning into a gate at Camp Pendleton, he was able to build an apparel company that now provides all sorts of services for disabled and paralyzed veterans, and who reminded me that, like, we're all still brothers in this, and we all have our different struggles, but we can all make it through together. That's what it is. You have to remember that. Hope is the most powerful thing ever. And we all kind of lose it, because when you get out, you go through that transition first year where it's just like the world is against you, and you're right, it is against you. I've been asked how many people have I killed, how do I have PTSD, and do I know anybody that died? And I was like, wow, this is a great first job interview. I didn't think that would happen, but people feel like, since they've watched The Hurt Locker or Zero Dark 30, that we're connected, and it's not that. It's just, I just don't understand where we're viewed as in such a way, but, like, it's kind of catch-22 in the sense that we're veterans who want to bridge the divide and connect each other, but we don't want to give you so much. This is our world, this is your world. How about this and that? And so it's got to go out there. But yeah, I just think we need to remind people they're worth it again.
When it comes to self-worth, one of the coolest things that I get to be a part of is hiring people. And when you see a guy come in who has just had the worst run of luck, and you hear some of these stories, and you just you feel horrible. You pick this guy, you pick one, and you watch what happens over the next 90 days. Give it 1 quarter of working, and you can almost turn somebody's life around when they feel that sense of self-worth, and when they're providing for their families and they have a paycheck. And we, it might be a little bit different with us, because we're surrounded by veterans. But even if we can't get a veteran a job, because we don't, we are a small team in a small company still, but we'll take volunteers, and they see what's happening in there, and they see, like, for instance, we make these things called lifelines. They're made out of paracord bracelets, or paracord, and it's 550 cord, and sometimes a veteran will come in and he'll see guys making them at the table, and he's like, oh, man, I used to make those out in the field. And you see like their eyes light up a little bit, and maybe they're asking for a job or whatever it is. They say can't, but we really need help making these lifelines, man, if you don't mind. And we're not even, like with specific people that I haven't been able to pay, you still watch that self-worth, like the ignite in their spirit, and all of a sudden it's like they're on a whole new path all of a sudden, and they're still even if they're not making money, but self-worth, if you can I lend a hand to somebody to make them feel like they have a mission and that they have worth, I think that's a huge benefit.
Are there any more questions?
But I don't know that it specifically answered her question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
Do
we
you feel
got
like
lost
the
track on
question
that.
was answered? Do you feel?
I think just getting them. I think just getting them around other people that have the same thing, just the same things going on. I think that's the quickest way, because I know they don't want to listen. So I think that's the quickest way, right?
Yeah, and I think now that I've got a chance to really process the question, think about it. I think that. When we talk about addressing mental health and emotional health, we always try to go to like, well, what we wait for, like that fatal moment. We wait way too long to try to intervene. We believe that until you see the signs, that everything's okay. When the things we've been talking about up here, like self-worth, renewed purpose, empathy, sympathy, mentorship. Who in the world doesn't want that anyways? Why are we waiting to try to give people these things? And so I think that, instead of wondering how, you can, tell a big bad Marine that it's okay to, to reach into his emotions and admit that he's going through some tough times. It's as easy as asking him if he saw the ball game last night, and then following up a couple days later and asking him how his daughter's doing, and just showing that you are interested in their lives, and that provides some sort of rapport. And then before you know it, once that bridge is there, they may come back across it themselves once they trust you, and so you may never even have to ask the question. You're just providing that bridge for them to come back across when they need it. So I think rather than wondering, what do we do once we see the signs, I think it's more like, well, what can we do to just not have to ever see the signs? Like, what are the things we can do way ahead of the time? That's simple stuff. I mean, there's no reason why we can't, there's no reason why we can't get people volunteering in organizations and getting that renewed purpose, that self-worth, and providing empathy with each other. And so I think that's probably my best answer for your question.
If I can add something to that too, telling somebody that they need help is normally not a good way to go about it. I remember I've been told that I think once or twice, and when I was told that, I was.
How'd you do with that?
I was offended, and after that, and after I started trying to process it, I realized that like, who is this person to tell me that I need help, and what. I start relating to my background of being a Marine, and I'm like, this person doesn't have a freaking clue what I'm capable of. So back off, and I'll process it on my own. I think what Tim was saying about the conversation and being interested in that person, whether you know them or not, that's the biggest thing. And definitely don't pretend when you're doing it. You have to be interested, and you have to follow up and just say, hey man, how you doing? Maybe you're having a rough day the other day, I don't know, but something seemed a little off. Not, suggesting that somebody needs help in therapy, because that I have never taken that well.
Yeah, or the psychologist card that you hand to them doesn't go well either.
Yeah. So we have a question from the feed. Why does it appear that veteran suicide is a bottom-up feed instead of a combines arms type, where the ground and the VA are proactively assaulting the DoD?
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
I know. But I think maybe what the question is why does it seem like we're looking up for answers instead of having answers amongst us?
I think that's a political question.
IEVA, doing a lot of legislature work. There's a lot of efforts to move up and look towards, work towards Congress and the higher levels of VA for solutions. Why do you think why do you think that's occurring more than what you and I are doing right now, what we're doing right here in having this conversation amongst us? Why do you think we're looking up versus looking around us?
So it's two things. One, veteran suicide issue is itself. There's over 22 veterans a day that commit suicide. The majority of them, 69%, are 50 and older, right? And it's talked about in such a way to where it's like what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And I feel that too often it's easy to look up and say, why aren't you helping us, government? You know, you can send us to war and things like that. And to do all these things, we come back and help us again. Well, that's not working. It's completely contradictory. I was never like on patrol and be like, well, why can't you help us, government? No, it was up to me and it was up to my guys, and we have to take initiative. And it's not. And besides the fact is that there's so, like, we outpace ovarian cancer, teen child gun deaths, and cocaine overdose, the veteran suicide rate. And I don't have time to wait because I waited for so long. That's it. And if you're going to try and wait for an answer, you're never going to find it, because I waited and I lost a whole bunch of friends, almost as many now as I've lost in combat. And I don't have time for that. And for me personally, it just came down to a point to where I couldn't just stand the idea of sitting on the sidelines anymore and just saying, you know, I can't believe this has happened. I can't believe he did that, or he's gone now. And then be like, no, well, I'm not going to do anything active about it. It's too big of an issue. That's not going to work for me. That's my thing on it.
Unless anybody has any pending questions, I think it's a perfect time to wrap up. And I want to read a tweet that has come through from someone who's watching the feed that I think best summarizes what's occurring right now and the importance of it. This type of honesty and vulnerability in public is what sparks conversations that save lives. And I think that's exactly what's occurring right now, and I think everybody would agree that that's the power behind I mean, there's only like, what, 20, 25 of us in this, 30 of us, I'm not good at math. Shapes and colors is more my thing. But you know, there's a small number of us here in this room, but you know, that doesn't take away from the power that that this conversation has had. And I can only hope that a few of you will be able to take this conversation and be able to bring it to your organizations and spark other ideas of way of reaching the veterans and anybody else that's obviously suffering from mental and health issues. So I'll let Moose take us home.
This was powerful. It was powerful for me. I watched the room. I shed some tears with Ralph. This hits home. It hits home for me. It brought back memories that I had not thought about in a long time. I do want to say, in wrapping up, these guys are going to be around. We actually had the ability to have dinner with any of our panelists, and we're trying to raise money, so we suggested $250 if we wanted to have dinner, and that would be with any of the panelists, and that would take care of the dinners, and then we get a little money that would be left over that we can put towards the projects. I know everybody's brought a little something to the table. I know that Noah and Mark and Mary brought some T-shirts. More importantly, to show what I actually bought one, which they will sell you, but they just want to show you what they do and how they promote and make money. Tim has got some challenge coins. The challenge coins, which if you don't know what that is, I've got my 1 2 mini coin that he afforded to me because I helped put this project together, and I really appreciate that. A challenge coin, by the way, in the service, if you didn't have your challenge coin in your pocket when somebody pulled their challenge coin out, that meant you had to buy the rounds. So that was the way it was done. And I didn't buy many rounds. I always kept my challenge coins with me. And Zach is with Courage Beyond. I would encourage you to talk to any of them. They all have unique missions. We're all brothers in this, and we blend. One's not more competitive than the other. They're all doing great things. And Ralph, who builds motorcycles, he is an airline pilot, but his passion is knockout, and then what he does with the vets. So everybody has a story to tell. They're here for you. I would encourage you to go up and meet each one of them individually. I want to thank you personally for coming. This is, as Zach said, they won't sleep well tonight. I can tell you that right now. You just sucked some life out of them, but it's good because it's healthy and it's important. You saw some tough Marines up there that have seen a lot of stuff, and they're not afraid to shed a tear, and I think that's what we need to see more of, and and how we can work with each other. So I also want to thank the Southern, I don't think Kendall's in here, Tom Morales for giving up the room. I think that was just, Tom is one of the more successful restaurateurs in Nashville. He didn't have to do this. Bobby Brantley gave us the platform to use. It's just a lot of people that went in to make this happen. So I just want to thank everybody, and I want to thank these guys. And I want to